Alright, day 14 is in the bag. It's been an interesting day for me. Very busy Monday. Today was Monday for me. So, it went about as good as Mondays could go. That's not true. It was your typical terrible Monday. Not stressful enough to want to smoke. However, I did notice something really, really interesting today. My sense of smell is definitely coming back, and I'm starting to smell the aroma on smokers that is beyond their how do I put this? Their general proximity. It's almost like a cloud of after smoke that stays on them. And I remember this smell from when I was a kid before I smoked very heavily. People that smoked in their houses or in their cars with the windows rolled up, that kind of deal, or chain smoked, they would have that smell. Whereas people that smoked a little bit more casually and not so much indoors, mostly outdoors, did not have as strong of a smell unless you came very close to them, maybe smelled their clothes. But outside of that, it was pretty masked as far as the proximity is concerned. Now, I remember being told by several different people during my time smoking that I never smelled like cigarettes. It would be a rare instance. Like if somebody was close to me right after I got done smoking a cigarette, they'd be able to smell it. But as far as the proximity, I never had that. And part of that is because for a while, I was very careful about smoking in my vehicle. If I did, I would have lots of windows rolled down and try to keep my hand out the window at all times. And I didn't smoke indoors. I never really enjoyed doing that. The only time I think I've done that, is when I was at somebody's house that allowed that kind of deal. But I always left that house smelling like cigarettes, reeking of cigarettes. So that part of my olfactory senses has returned. My sense of smell is definitely heightening. And I will say this, I know I mentioned an episode or two ago that I enjoyed the smell of cigarettes. I do enjoy the smell of cigarettes while they're being smoked when it's near me, the burning tobacco smell. And even after a year of not smoking, still ended up enjoying that smell. However, I do not like the scent that cigarettes leave afterwards. I didn't like the smell when it was on my hands or my clothes, and I surely don't like the smell on other people. It's bad, and I don't think many smokers realize how far the proximity goes. It is a huge proximity, and I'm now realizing just how many people at my second job, how many people smoke at that place. It is crazy. When everybody's heading to break, before they even went out to smoke a cigarette yet, they're all passing through the same hallway to get to the smoking area, and it's like the most overwhelming in all direction proximity smell of smoke. I'm pretty sure it's universal between all smokers. We never enjoyed that part of it. If there is somebody out there that enjoys the after smoke smell, you're a rare breed. Alright, so I'm going to do a quick rundown because we're now at the 2-week mark. I'm going to do a quick rundown of all the different benefits that it kicked in the first 2 weeks. And by the way, the first 2 weeks is so massive. It's so difficult. If you've made it this far and you have not smoked a cigarette, you've not hit a cigarette, you've not touched a cigarette, you haven't bought anything to smoke, you haven't vaped, you have just cold turkey quit. If you have 100% not touched nicotine by this point, there's no way that you can't do the rest of it. You can quit. You've made it past Mount Everest of getting over nicotine. Now, the problem is the constant reminder that you might be lacking something, and you will always fill that void. I think people get confused with that void being a craving. I don't think it's necessarily a craving as it is a psychological effect. How would I give it an analogy? It's almost like, I don't know if you guys have heard of this or not, but there's something called ghost limbs, a ghost limb effect, and that's if you have like a limb amputated. People that say that they've had an appendage amputated before, they can still feel as if the appendage is there sometimes in full length. So let's say you had an entire leg amputated, there's still a sensation all the way down to the toes sometimes, called the ghost limb effect. And it's like a phantom pain. I believe that smoking leaves that same kind of phantom void in your life of, okay, something's missing that hasn't been here for a huge portion of my life, which it can be confused with that craving. But I really think it's a psychological thing more so than any kind of physical craving, because it's nothing that's going to be so extreme to make you angry, agitated. It doesn't have control over your emotions the same way the first 2 weeks do. You don't have to have it. It's just one of those things. It's like a little seed planted in the back of your head that you don't have this in your life, but you have had this in your life. So that's something you have to battle and come to terms with if you plan on quitting permanently. The good news is, and I'll bring this up again, if you can make it the full year, then you know that you can quit permanently. So if you go back to it after year 1 and you just wanted to try it out and see what a year without smoking is like, is it worth it to you? Do you feel better? Do you feel more in control of yourself? Do you feel mentally more in charge and aware and motivated to do what you want to do in life? Or, is it just not, you'd rather be a smoker and you'd rather go that route? After a year, you'll be able to kind of flick that switch on and off and be able to successfully do it. So I'm not saying that I recommend that, especially after learning the information that you learned from Quit Rich. Definitely don't recommend going back to smoking. But if you do quit for this length of time, it makes quitting the second time around a piece of cake. As you've heard on this podcast, I really haven't had a struggle at all. I mean, I still have that subtle, I want to have the oral fixation or want to hold something. That's still there. But the cravings didn't get to me this time. I was able to mentally prepare for it and accept it. And I think because I've seen what a year looks like, and I know that it's possible, and I finally got to that point in my life where I was able to see that firsthand, my brain now can accept not having cigarettes or nicotine. There's no panic involved in it, because I'm not afraid of the other side of it. And I also had a kind of a timetable after pushing myself the first time around. I now have a timetable of just how long it takes for me to not be all crazy after quitting. So let's do the rundown. Bring it right back. Here we go. So I'm reading this. This is off an article from healthline.com. The name of the article is What Happens When You Quit Smoking. And they have an overview. They say that smoking releases thousands of chemicals into your body. The result isn't only damage to your lungs, but also to your heart and many other body structures. But even if you've smoked for many years, you can reverse these effects and experience health benefits from the first hours you stop smoking to the decades after you quit. Sorry, I'm tired. So let's go over the milestones. So 20 minutes after your last cigarette, positive health effects of quitting smoking begin 20 minutes into it. Your blood pressure and pulse will start to return to more normal levels. So you got to think of that. What does that really mean? Because you had 20 minutes without smoking while being a smoker. I'm sure of it. And except for some of you people that are smoking like 3-4 packs a day, and you probably should do medication to quit, because that much might be extremely traumatic on you. But you definitely need to wean off. Don't be smoking that much. That's crazy. But if you think about it, we've all had that 20 minute after our last cigarette, and it's crazy to think that nicotine puts our blood pressure and our pulse at such a raised level, and that we're constantly doing this seesaw of raising our blood pressure and then lowering it, raising it, waiting for it to go back down, and then raising it again. That cannot be good for us, and that's probably where the heart problems will come into play. In addition, fibers in the bronchial tubes that previously didn't move well due to constant exposure to smoke will start to move again. So think about this. Think about it like tree branches, right? Bronchial tubes. The very, very tips, the twigs, the very slender and narrow bronchial tubes are portions of the tubes. Think about how resonated those must be when you smoke. And that's where the smoke gets trapped at and really has time to resonate. After quitting smoking, those ends of your bronchial tubes free up again. And that probably increases your lung capacity a little bit. It definitely eases up restriction on your lungs. That part feels great, by the way. It feels really good to take a deep breath and not feel raspy, not feel like I got a cough, and taste the air differently. I know that sounds weird, but even the air starts to taste more fresh. So that is beneficial for the lungs. These fibers help move irritants and bacteria out of the lungs, helping reduce the risk for infection. 8 hours after your last cigarette. 8 hours was a long time ago. We've already hit the 300-hour mark. It's crazy. Remember those first 8 hours? And how stressful and panicky that was? Look at you now, 2 weeks in. Yeah, you got this. Within 8 hours, your carbon monoxide levels will return to a more normal level. Carbon monoxide is a chemical present in a cigarette smoke that replaces oxygen particles in the blood. This lowers the amount of oxygen your tissues receive. Remember we were talking about that aging stuff? It might have something to do with that. And if there's lower oxygen particles in the blood, that's going to mean that there's lower oxygen going to the brain as well. When carbon monoxide goes away, your oxygen levels start to increase to more normal levels. This increased oxygen helps nourish tissues and blood vessels that were getting less oxygen while you were smoking. 24 hours after your last cigarette, gee, that was 13 days ago. By the 1 day mark, you've already decreased your risk of heart attack. That's because of reduced constriction of veins and arteries, as well as increased oxygen levels that go to the heart to boost its functioning. I'm sure the bronchial tubes help too. Nicotine levels in your bloodstream have also decreased to negligible amounts at this time. You got to remember moving your heart rate and blood pressure up and down. Won't be doing that quite as frequently, at least not as regular basis on regular intervals, such as your smoke breaks. 48 hours after your last cigarette, previously damaged nerve endings start to regrow. You may start to notice that senses that were previously dulled to smoking improve. You may realize that you're smelling and tasting things better than you were before. Now, food's definitely gotten tastier for me, but I didn't really notice the height of smell until day 14. And I've smoked for over 20 years of my life. So maybe that's why it took me so long to get my smell starting to kick back in. But it is. 72 hours after your last cigarette, within 3 days after quitting smoking, you'll find yourself breathing more easily. This is because the bronchial tubes inside the lungs have started to relax and open up more. This makes air exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen easier. In addition, your lung capacity, or ability of the lungs to fill up with air, increases about 3 days after quitting. 1 week, we already went over that one as well. I think I'm going to recap that. Just to summarize it real quick, it's basically saying if you can make it 1 week without quitting smoking, you're 9 times as likely to be successful in quitting. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Congratulations. Big round of applause for yourself. 2 weeks is amazing. I'm proud of all of you. We're at the halfway mark. We're going to be able to make it the full 30 days. And I'm rooting for you. As far as the Quit Rich stuff and what I'm working on currently, I'm working with a graphic artist right now to create a poster. And I will put the poster link in the description of this podcast once it is completed. But it's kind of a cool poster. I'm taking all the villains from Quit Rich and putting them in suits and kind of making it serious. I don't know if I'd use the terminology dark, but it's definitely more serious, less lighthearted than I'm used to having my characters drawn as. I want it to be very cool looking. I want the characters to appear very cool looking, and I will eventually be able to have it available for people to get as a poster at some point. Don't know if I'll ever put this particular piece of work on any clothing, but I'm not going to rule that out. That might happen as well. But I'm looking forward to it, and I really, really enjoy this artist's work, and I hope that after they've completed the work, you guys go and give them a follow on social media, and if you have any art you'd like them to do, maybe hire them if they're doing commission work, and if they're not, buy some of the artwork that they're selling. Hopefully they'll be selling products of their own, creating their own brand. But I'm super excited to be working with them and look forward to showing you guys what we're having drawn up. That concludes day 14. That is the end of day 14, the end of 2 weeks. Thank you all for being active listeners. Thank you all for attempting to quit smoking. And at this point, we're non-smokers. We got 2 solid weeks to prove it. We almost have an entire month. And at the 1 month mark, that's 1 out of 12 months. Let me tell you something. You may feel like that's mountainous. God, my brain's still not connecting. It's going to be another week or 2 before I fire on all cylinders again, but it's going to be monumental. You may think that the 12 months is going to be this incredibly large milestone, but I will tell you, after you get to month 2, and you're in month 2, I'd say about midway through it, you start to forget that quitting smoking was even a thing. You're just a non-smoker at that point. And the year flies by. Oh my gosh, does it go quick. Before you know it, you won't even feel like you're coming up on a year of quitting smoking and just realize, oh my gosh, I'm almost at a year. Wild. So, kudos to y'all, and I'll see you guys for day 15.